The basic functions of the expression system, a generic crawl. I'm in the layout mode in my expression system, and I'm in a project that I've put together for just doing different things, and I want to do a crawl. By default, when I start with a project, I get one scene added to it. I'm going to go ahead and work on a crawl now. So I'm going to go to my scene manager, and there's three icons across this toolbar. There's new scene group, and search for a scene. We're going to click on new scene group, and you can see when I do that, it creates scene group 1, and it says roll. Well, we're going to be doing a crawl, so we're going to change that quickly. We're going to come down to the Object Inspector and choose the Scene Group tab. And for the group type isn't a roll, it will be a crawl. And for the direction, I'm working in English. In English, generally will read from right to left as it moves across the screen. Some of the other languages around the world will read from left to right, so we have that option here for users. We're going to basic functions of the expression system, a generic crawl. I'm in the layout mode in my expression system, and I'm in a project that I've put together for just doing different things, and I want to do a crawl. By default, when I start with a project, I get one scene added to it. I'm going to go ahead and work on a crawl now. So I'm going to go to my scene manager, and there's three icons across this toolbar. There's new scene group, and search for a scene. We're going to click on new scene group, and you can see when I do that, it creates scene group 1, and it says roll. Well, we're going to be doing a crawl, so we're going to change that quickly. We're going to come down to the Object Inspector and choose the Scene Group tab. And for the group type isn't a roll, it will be a crawl. And for the direction, I'm working in English. In English, generally will read from right to left as it moves across the screen. Some of the other languages around the world will read from left to right, so we have that option here for users. We're going to leave that alone right now, and we'll talk about duration in a little bit. But I'm going to come back up to my scene manager, and I've got my scene group, and this is basically a container. You can see later we're going to go through a couple of other videos to show how you'd really work with this, but for now I'm just going to do a basic crawl. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add a new scene right below it, and you can see it is below it. It is actually treated as a separate scene, but I want it to be a sub part of my crawl. So I'm going to click on it with my left mouse button and hold down and drag that on top of my scene group. And when I do that, when I let go, you'll see there's a little connector letting me know that it's now kind of attached between the two. And if I also close that with the expand contract button on the scene group, you can see now they open and close together. I'm going to come down into my scene 2, and I'm going to go over to my object library, and I'm going to add a text object. And when I do that, I have it here. I'm just going to use the generic font. I'm going to come up into my viewport, and I'm just going to type I wish I could type better, but I can't. You can see it just continues to type off the side of the screen, and that's fine. And again, I know I've got some typos in here. This is just some generic text. That's fine. I'm going to backspace all that out, and I just happen to have handy a copy of the Gettysburg Address. I'm just going to highlight it, copy the text. I'm going to go back to my text object in my viewport, and I'm going to paste that text in. And again, it's way off the right side of the screen. Next thing I'm going to do is, for me, a crawl normally appears in my mind at the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to go to the text object's transform setting. I'm going to adjust the Y value settings and bring it all the way down to safe title. And there it is. Now, I'm going to go back to my scene group, and I'm going to explain a couple of options here. We know that we've set this as a crawl. We know we've set it to go from right to left. I'm going to leave the speed as 2 right now. We'll talk about global margins in a little bit. I'm over here at header and footer. I can tell the system to start a blank page on start. That means the screen will be empty and the crawl will appear from the right to the left. And if I tell it to blank it on end, that means as the last piece of the crawl is done, it will crawl itself all the way off the right side of the screen. Treat last page as full means if I built this page properly and I want it to stop on screen at a certain indentation or something like that, the page will stop as where I've built it. So this is a way to put something into position. I also have the ability on the starts and stops to tell it to do an ease in and an ease out. And I can also tell it to loop. So if I can have this loop for multiple times. Let's say I'm doing a crawl that I just want to keep running through my entire program. If I enable looping and I leave the number as 0, it will run at 0. If I set the number to 1, it will run one time and then loop one time and then finish. I'm going to leave it at 0 for now. Now, I'm going to do this from within the layout mode. I normally would do this inside of the scene ID, or I'm sorry, the sequencer, but I'm just going to do it here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to display my virtual output so that you can see it. I'm going to put it up here to the right side for right now. And I'm going to go to my scene group and I'm going to double click on my scene group 1. And when I do that, you'll see there's a dialog box telling me that expression is waiting for a key. Press the space bar to continue or escape to abort. I'm going to press the space bar. And what you'll see over on my virtual output, and again, not on my viewport, but my virtual output, you'll see that crawl starting to move across the screen. I'm going to move this virtual output over here so we can see as I tinker with some of this. I can go in here to change the speed. So I'm going to put my cursor in the box and I'm just going to drag up and down. You can see that I'm changing the speed slightly. It's starting to get a little faster. I can do a big swipe here and you can see it'll go even faster yet. I could have also gone in here and told it the number of seconds I wanted it to go, and it will also let me pick the number of frames if that's the way I would rather work. And you will see that it can be interactive. And I'm going to make this really crazy fast so that it just flies off the edge of the screen here. And you're going to see, since I've got it looping, we're never going to see the end of it. It's just going to keep running and running and running. And we're about to get to the end of it right now. And again, it's in loop mode, so it's just going to keep going. And yes, I know it's crazy fast, but that's where it is. And there's the end. And it started again because we had it blank page on start and end. So you saw that go through. So that's a basic crawl. Okay, so we've built our basic crawl. Now I need to play it in a real world circumstance. So I'm going to press Control F1 to erase my frame buffer. I'm going to go into my sequence mode and I'm going to take my scene group and put it into my group. When I do that, I look down at my take item inspector, and what really matters in here is scene control. And I've got choices for a crawl and roll to tell it to wait for keystroke and also to pause for a certain number of frames if that's what I would like it to do. Let's explain this. If I select wait for keystroke and I have it checked, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my item number 2 on output, you can see when I do that I get the same dialog box like I saw before in the regular side. And you also notice the speed has been set as part of the scene group, so that's the speed that it's going to be moving across the screen at. I'm going to erase my screen. I'm going to turn off the wait for keystroke function, and when I do that and I go ahead and I play this graphic again, it just starts immediately as soon as I take it. So that's what the difference of wait for keystroke is.